What up, everyone? Welcome to Go to Market Crossroads. This is actually our first episode, and look, the intent of this series is really to give you, the go to market owner, actual insights on how to effectively go to market. What we've identified is really just it's harder than ever to win, which is ironic because everything you're hearing in the market tells you it's so easy. And so what I've decided to do is to create this Go to Market Crossroads channel and invite some of my friends that are much smarter than me that could help educate and equip you to learn how to effectively go to market. So I've got Harris Kinney with me as well as Zach Biddebor to really go through a variety of topics. But before we do that, Harris, Zach, welcome. I would love to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. What do you do? And then we'll get into a fun topic.
Sounds great. I'll go first since my name came up first. So yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Harris Kinney. I'm the founder of Outbound Sync. We are basically a cross-platform router for sequencing tools and bringing that data into CRM. And I previously ran a HubSpot solutions partner agency, so I've been in the ecosystem for a while now, and been in sales my whole career and watched it change quite a bit from like manually calling one number at a time from DNB. Like Dun & Bradstreet lists in 2009 to whatever it is today. So really excited to chat.
Awesome. Pumped to be here as well. Zach Biddebor, co-founder of Octave. One way to think about what we're kind of doing is we're trying to give you like your ICP as an endpoint. We really think about your messaging and positioning, how you talk about what you do, who it's for, what problems you solve is kind of your company's like unique DNA, if you will. That's kind of your fingerprint. And so we're trying to give that a purpose-built home, obviously with AI, where then you can integrate that knowledge into a variety of workflows, whether that be qualification, research, enrichment, writing emails, all kinds of cool stuff. I'm sure we'll talk about hopefully at some point. My background as well, I've been in the go-to-market trenches, if you will, for a long time. So 15 years ago, I was a SDR hammering the phone, the phone's an ATM. So I know this world. I'm trying to bring hopefully some of, what I've seen myself on teams I've been on, part of what I'm building and what I'm hearing from customers. And yeah, excited to jam here and hopefully help some people out.
That's great. And I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Brendan. I am the co-founder and CEO of RevPartners. Unlike Harris, I've stayed in the agency world for better or worse. So I am still living agency life while Harris and Zach experience software life. And my background, similar to Zach in the sense of, and actually Harris, of really been in the sales seats from SDR to, into leadership on the software side, and then moved actually into services over time. And one of the fun things about doing a podcast like this is these are relationships. And I remember, Harris, you and I first, I think it was actually at the Inbound Conference was the first time we got to start chatting. And then Zach, I know it was through a connection that we both share. And just been really impressed watching y'all's content and building partnerships with your software companies and realizing that your point of view is something that our audience could really benefit from. And so I'm really excited to get this kicked off. And like I said, I think what we're realizing is it's really hard to go to market right now, despite what you may be hearing. And in fact, for most people, everyone's going to market. It's just a matter of how well you're doing it. And for many, their go-to-market is broken. And so this is an attempt to equip you, the go-to-market owner, with some of those, actual insights they can take. So let's kind of get into our first topic, guys, for this episode, which gets into a not necessarily a sexy topic, but a really important topic, which is really around email deliverability. And what I mean by that, just to define that a little bit, and then we'll kind of riff on it, it's just the more that you and I talk to sales leaders, there's this frustration that the emails they're sending aren't actually landing in the inbox. So let's unpack that as to what the heck is going on. Why are we seeing that deliverability decrease so much? And then ultimately, what can they do to solve that problem? So maybe at a high level, let's start with like what has happened to cause that to be such a problem for the sales leader, but ultimately for the sales team that's doing the email outreach.
I'll let you jump in first, Harris, and then maybe I'll back you up with some more thoughts.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I think that it's important to remember kind of the context of where things came from. So, when Outreach came out and SalesLoft and some of these early sequencing tools, it sort of gave sales reps the ability to do more, to automate some of their workflow and to get more emails out. And so you had like marketing would send email blasts, to large lists of existing customers or to a trade show list. And then sales historically would go find individual prospects one-on-one and work them. And then the ability to reach out to multiple people, and then sequence it and then email a bunch of people in a day. And so, in kind of the halcyon days of how easy that was back then, I mean, you could just email like 1,000 people a day just from your main email address, from your main domain. And it was fine and it worked. But as more people did it, Google and Outlook, they started to clamp down. And I think like when you think about email deliverability, you just have to remember the ecosystem it's like an oligopoly, really. I mean, you have a handful of providers that have very, very, very important roles within the ecosystem, and they set the rules. And so if they change the rules, that's going to really affect how your team can perform. And I'm not saying the rules are good or bad, just objectively, like that's the way it is. They own most of the market, and so they get to decide how it works. And so when they saw these changes, they didn't like it. And so they made changes to how the filters worked, and then teams cranked up the volume even more. And you had this kind of cat and mouse game happening between these sequencing tools and the email providers. And there's a lot of layers to like what, it's volume, it's data quality, it's the copy. There's a lot of things that go into it. But I mean, that's the long story short, is it was really easy and it's gotten harder. And now it's to the point where I think that this idea of like one-to-one email, it's starting to be taken out of the hands of the individual sales reps now. And they're, not doing what they have been doing even for the last 5 to 10 years. And that's where I think, AI is changing that, and the idea of like understanding the customer and like what's the right messaging and doing much more sophisticated testing. So there's like a lot we can get into about deliverability, but like in general, that's kind of what I see is happening on my side.
Yeah.
Just real quick on that, and then Zach, I'll let you riff. You mentioned the rules have changed, Sarah. So maybe before we get into like what's going on with AI, but you said rule changes. Let's unpack that a little bit further.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, so okay, we can go. There's like a couple layers to this. So, I mean, let's just talk about like what is a cold email. So a cold email is like when you're sending someone an email that they've never heard from you before, but it's also like a first time interaction potentially between your domain and their domain. And when I say domain, I mean like outboundsync.com. So my email address is harris@outboundsync.com. Feel free to cold email me. I don't care. And so if I'm sending email out for the first time from my main address, like the recipient has never heard from me before. And so my sending tool has to decide like, should I deliver this email or not? Is it malicious, or is it okay for Google to send Harris's email? And then the recipient has to decide, do I want to receive it or not? And so like there's a few basic things that happen. You have to have like the domain configured. There's records to authenticate. I am indeed Harris, and the person who's receiving it is indeed the recipient of the email. So you have like this very like kind of really technical level. Then you have like historical interactions between the domains. You've got how many emails I'm sending. So when we say it's getting harder, like they're limiting how many emails you can send out from your email address. And increasingly, if you've got a rogue sales rep that's just blasting out emails, it's going to potentially affect the entire company's reputation across their domain, because they're emailing like 10,000 people a day. Their account's going to get locked. All of a sudden, your invoices aren't sending to customers anymore. Your customer success people aren't able to like get in touch. Your salespeople's calendar invites aren't going out. So that's like kind of like the first level of risk of like contagion is like the main domain. And so that's why people are moving to setting up secondary domains. And then once you set up secondary domains, which would be like get@outboundsync.com, then you still have like additional concerns around the content. And frankly, like the email providers are rightly filtering pretty heavily because there are concerns about phishing and cyber attacks. Like cold email, we might think that our cold email is noble, but someone who's trying to steal money from a company would probably do some of the similar things that we're doing when we're just trying to grow a company and offer a valuable service. So things like images and things like links that can be used maliciously are also need to be taken into consideration. And this is also where the copy comes into mind. Because if you're sending the same email 5,000 times in a row, that's weird. No normal person does that, And so rightly, email systems are like, what's up? So deliverability is like kind of a set of like, it's like a matryoshka doll. It's like a nested like set of things where like each one you have to like pass this test. And so those are where they're like applying more rules. Whereas like 10 years ago, you could send 1,000 emails that were identical from your main domain, and now you can't. Is that like a good starting point?
I think it's a great starting point. I think it's a good segue to Zach, as Zach gets more into probably the content. But even before that, Zach, I think it'd be, I mean, you mentioned you were an SDR a while back, and you've been a manager, and you probably had teams that, to I think what Harris was talking about is like before the rule change or this concept of the rule changing, volume was key, and that's like what was preached, and more and more and more. How many activities have you done today? So I'd love to hear kind of your expand on some of the things that Harris was just talking about.
Yeah, I think, look, I think as a go-to-market community, like we can take some ownership over the predictable revenue era. You know, like people got lazy and it kind of worked, and you could shove enough activities in the top of the funnel that stuff would drop out of the bottom, and like that's just not the reality anymore. And I think just to like maybe add on to like, you know, what Harris was talking about, some of the like just technically, you know, like one thing like I talk to people about a lot is like, hey, it's not just about how AI could help you with your sales. Like AI is impacting everything, right? Like Google and Microsoft, they have AI that's helping their spam filtering, right? Like it's getting much easier for them. 10 years ago, it was really hard to maybe spot hey, we want to track the reputation of like a phone number in a signature that's like across a bunch of different domains, right? Like, oh, you could be using 18 different domains to send from, but they all have your same phone number in them. 10 years ago, like that was really hard for them to like track that reputation. Now that's incredibly easy. Like they have AI that'll go like, oh, I've seen like this phone number is associated with a spam report. I don't care where you're sending it from. So like there's like all kinds of things happening in the background, like technically that like AI, they're getting much more sophisticated where like, yeah, simple templates and variables and spin tacks like aren't cutting it. You need to be like that much more precise, that much more, you know, distinct with like each message you deliver. And like the key being like, you just need to take good shots on goal. And like, I kind of think it's good for the industry in a way, you know, it feels harder, and like we all feel the friction increasing, and it causes a lot of like anxiety for us and our customers, but ultimately it's good friction that's like helping us do the right thing, which is like make sure I'm trying to talk to the right people about the right thing, you know. And that's like the gravity of the universe is kind of forcing that all on us. And then I think we're all gonna come out to a better spot. And like I think the you know, the goal shouldn't be like, how do I treat the spam filters like some Turing test that I can like sneak my way around? Like the goal is like, hey, they have good sense, and like I need to make sure I'm like delivering a message to that person that they go, I know exactly why I got this, you know, like that should be the goal. And then you're going to hit the inbox a lot more if you're trying to hit that target versus like, I'm just trying to game the system, you know?
Totally agree with that.
Yeah, and guys, before we jump into a bit of the solutioning, which it's always tempting to go into solutions, but like how I think we talk about that frustrate. Like if you're the sales leader, you're frustrated that emails are going to spam, but I don't know if the sales leader really understands the true impact that it's having to the business in terms of, when you guys mentioned the word reputation. I think there's an element of like, there's the trust with the buyer, which is certainly an impact, but also just what is happening to that company domain when it's going to spam. Can you speak into, hey, there actually is a risk to the business by not doing this well, besides just being frustrated that email's going to spam?
Well, I mean, I think it's like there's an incentive misalignment situation, right? So like, I mean, talk about a company that just has their main domain and they're doing everything off of their main domain today. I mean, I was this business development leader where I was getting paid on commission. And if I sold more widgets, I got paid more. And nobody else was under that incentive structure, but I was. And I was, you know, married, had a house, was about to start a family. It's like, yeah, I would like to get paid my full amount of compensation. And so it's, and meanwhile, like nobody else was helping me. Nobody else was offering to help set up infrastructure or do anything. So it's like, okay, well, I just need to send email, because like there's literally no other lever I can pull. I don't have any control over the marketing budget. I don't have any control over what trade shows I go to. You know, I don't even access to a data provider. And so it's like, what are the tools I have? I have this phone and I have this email address and I have a database and I can work off of this database. And so like a lot of reps are in that position. And so they're going to use the tools that they have to meet the goals that have been set for them by the company that hired them in the first place. And so when they're doing that, they do potentially risk the company's ability to function. I mean, because email and like authentication through your email address is you might not even be able to log into QuickBooks. If you get locked out of your email account and you need that 2-factor code and you can't log into your Google, you might not be able to close your books or file your taxes or whatever. So, it's a really, really kind of foundational thing. It's like fundamentally like the company that holds your email account holds like sort of identity and your ability to communicate. And so you want to make sure that you're not putting people in your organization in a position where they can jeopardize that just so they can do the job that you hired them for in the first place, right? I think everyone's like doing their best. I don't think anyone has any bad incentives, but I think it's important to remember that what the reality is for the rep in the seat who's, just trying to help everybody, frankly, everybody get paid, right?
Yeah. It can be real damaging when your proposals and your order forms,
Yeah.
when those aren't making it through the pipes, then the business really starts feeling the pain. And I think that there's like also a component of, especially like when we're talking cold email, like the replies of like, hell yeah, I want to meet tomorrow, give me a demo. Like those are rarely gonna fall through the bottom, and they're rarely gonna like fall through the bottom right away. Like cold email definitely has there's a compounding that kind of has to build up, right? Like it's useful really as this channel that you can kind of tap people on the shoulder over time. Like, I'm here, I got a relevant message, this is what we do. Hey, you might just be like scanning this thing for 2 seconds, but you start seeing, buyers pick up on this. They start seeing your name, they start seeing, oh, we work with this customer, like those things add up over time. And if you lose that as like a channel, that even if you're not getting the meetings, like if you lose that as a channel to like just again get that little figment of your solution in your market's mind, like that's a huge loss for the company. So I mean, I think even forget if you're like getting the meetings and a bunch of hand raisers going, yes, I want a demo. Like you should care about just this being a clean channel that we can just communicate with our TAM and our market.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll just say really quick too, this applies to other channels. This applies to LinkedIn and it applies to phones too. Calling has gotten harder. Doing outreach on LinkedIn has gotten harder. All of these channels have gotten a lot harder. People's like LinkedIn accounts getting locked, and that's like their personal LinkedIn account, phone numbers being marked as going to spam, and just like connect rates plummeting. And so we can also touch on some of these tactics and like how to scale messaging across channels too, because I do think that email deliverability, I know, is like the prompt, but I do think it's also true that the same thing is happening across channels for go-to-market. And some like more traditional industries, they really rely on phones. If your if everyone in your company's number is being marked as spam, and you're a company that sells into trades or education or manufacturing where those people answer the phone and they don't look at their email, then you also have a really big problem. The accounts receivable phone number is going to spam. That's an issue too, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I can't tell you how many text messages now I report as spam. So whoever you are at these companies, you're hurting your company. So sorry if you can't open your QuickBooks account. But I think to where you're going, Harris. I mean, I think there are unintended consequences where incentives always drive behaviors, and while they're well intentioned, there are impacts that they can have depending on how it's set up. And so let's talk a little bit about, and I think to your point, Harris, too, we will talk about other channels. And maybe I'll start with you, Zach, because we talk about the kind of the new rules, if you will, that was alluded to earlier. This kind of gets into a little bit of the solutioning. Yeah. What are some ways that, the companies and the sales teams can really embrace like new ways or new approaches, to avoid, spam hell?
Yeah, I think, probably starts, with good, clean infrastructure. You should spin up secondary domains. Like you should get stuff off your primary to start. So like we don't have a oopsie, right? So I'd say like starts there. Then I'd say, getting a cleaner list is like where AI has really like the needle's been moved, and like going through a list of like 10,000 contacts, for example, a few years ago, and having to figure out like, all right, can can I figure out if everyone in here is like SOC 2 certified or not? And like, that's really important to our sales process. Like that was like incredibly manual. Now you can do things like that instantly, right? So there's, you know, almost no excuse of like, get a clean list, you know, like have smaller buckets. Like you shouldn't have one massive list. Like here's 100,000 accounts that we like, you know, like bad move, you know, segment them more, clean them, make sure you're getting, again, there's just good hygiene practices. Make sure you're verifying emails. You're knowing, you know, if you're, when we can talk more technical stuff, if you're, you know, trying to be wary of like never sending to catch-alls where you might be more likely to get bounces and stuff like that. You know, there's lots of stuff now where you can easily do work up front at scale that's going to make sure like, okay, we have a good group of people. We have high confidence we're going to be able to deliver to the inbox. And like we've, you know, put the boundaries in the universe in a way that like we can deliver a really specific message. And then like, of course, like near and dear to my heart is like, I think each person is probably worthy of like a somewhat unique message, you know, like the same way if you were to get on a call with somebody, like depending on who they are, what they do, what their company does, like you're going to have a slightly different flavor of the message. And like, that's useful for deliverability. I think that's useful for like, hey, the tighter the aperture on our message, like that just gives us a better chance at like getting somebody to engage. If you're kind of wide open with your messaging and value, benefit, we help the world, like people are just gonna have a really hard time like latching onto that and seeing themselves in it at all. So I'd say that's where I think, yeah, the rubber can meet the road is like make sure we're targeting the right people, have clean pipes, all that, and then give them something to react to. You know, don't give them 18 different like broad value statements. Give them one hypothesis, and you'll get a better shot of somebody being awesome, not for me. You know, like that's what we want to get somebody to. You know.
Yeah, it kind of reminds. It goes back to something you were talking about earlier. I can't remember the scientific word for it, but like the red car effect, where you see a red car or you start seeing that car everywhere. It's like if you do effective multi-channel outreach, I would assume there's this desire, like, hey, to your point about yes, value first, don't pitch slap, but think about something from a long-term perspective of how you're building that relationship as to try to sell them on that one email. All right, guys, assume that I'm an idiot, which I kind of am. So like from you guys say things like secondary email verification as like that kind of first step. I'm a CRO. I don't know what y'all are talking about. What is that? What do those things actually mean? And what are some options that I have at my disposal as I'm kind of thinking through, okay, crap, I do have this problem. Sounds like those are some of the steps I first need to take. Regardless of content and list, I need to have that in place. Harris, how would you approach that in terms of a definer and a solution that may be out there for the audience?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, if you're expecting your sales reps to be contacting more than, let's just say 10 to 20 people a day, doing anything like at higher volume, you need to think about picking tools that will support those channels that you're doing that outreach through. So if you're doing email, there are tools like Smartlead, like Instantly, like Email Bison that are built for more scaled outbound that can reach hundreds or thousands of people a day. And then there's kind of infrastructure set up, underlying infrastructure to use those tools. So for email, you would buy domains, you would buy email accounts, you would set them up. For phones, again, you'd look at dialers and you'd look at setting up phone numbers and dialers potentially that include like number rotation between them. And then for LinkedIn, that's like a whole different ball of wax, LinkedIn automation. Personally, I avoid that, but I think like having at least manual tasks that are triggered through LinkedIn, there's ways to do it. But basically the point is like, you're going to have a number of touches that you're expecting your reps to make, and then an expected conversion rate for each of those touches. And if your volume is going to go above 10 to 20 across any of those channels, I think you need to start thinking about picking specific tools that are built for those specific jobs. And then you can hack the conversion rate by doing some of the stuff we were talking about before, which is like, so if you're validating the emails, if you're using a tool like Clay, you can validate email addresses. If you're using a tool like Octave, you can get better copy so that you're going to get a better conversion rate. And then all of a sudden, like if you think about the fraction, that like denominator, the number of people you have to reach goes down if you can convert more of those more of those touches. So I think that would be like kind of my basic overarching way that I would think about that. And I don't even have anything to sell you in any of those things that I just said. Like I don't sell email sequencer or call sequencer or LinkedIn tools. So, but I pay people to do those things. And I've been doing this for 5 years, and I've sent a lot of emails, and I've done a lot of this stuff, and I've done cold calling. So I guess my last thing would be like, pick a channel, try to be excellent at that channel, and ask for help. Talk to people who understand that space and who can help you get set up in the infrastructure, get set up with the tools. Because however you think it works, if you're like in a senior leadership position, your understanding of it is probably a little bit dated. I think your understanding of the fundamentals of the job and how to like move the organization forward, heck yeah, like that's why you're in that seat. But the like day in and day out, it has changed since you had quota, for sure. It changed from a month ago, right? So my advice would be like, just ask for help or work with vendors. Like that's what we do for our own outreach. And it's in theory, I should be able to do it all myself. But I'm curious, Zach, what you think about that too.
Yeah, I think that last point is like super important. And I know like your question, Brendan, was like a little more like technical, but I think like there is a mindset shift required here where like email was like this like risk-free, consequence-free, super low cost channel. And like that's fundamentally changed. Like there are risks and consequences. Like if you misbehave on your primary domain, like it is now you can get locked out very quick. And guess what? Like the costs have risen too. Like, hey, you're going to need secondary domains. You're going to need new types of tooling and ways to use this channel. But like the mindset shift is also should be like, damn, like this is a path we can get right to our prospect's front door. Like if we do it right, there's kind of no equivalent of like email of just like I can get right to this precise person. So that should have some cost, and I think like that's for a lot of organizations. It just, especially the last 10 years, like it was just email is really free and cheap, and we could give every rep a machine gun and go sick. And like, okay, it didn't work. Like, oh well, that was like the worst outcome. And now the worst outcome is like, well, yeah, now your proposals and your invoices aren't going out. Like so. It's just like, yeah, I think for those that are, kind of, I'm sure there's some people like experiencing this now. Like it is, the landscape has moved a lot.
So guys, what I'm hearing is there's this mindset shift of from do more to do better. I think it's kind of one of the things that you're talking about, Zach and Harris, is like, hey, the volume game is not necessarily, while that worked in the past, it's no longer going to be successful in this new kind of paradigm that we're describing, which I think is a really important takeaway. I think the other thing that I like as I'm sitting here, something's encouraging is yes, the bar is higher. Yes, it's more difficult. But man, there's this amazing opportunity, even as you were saying, Zach, of like literally having direct access to your buyer, that the ones that do this right can not only win, but win faster. And so like that learning curve, while it may be higher, man, for those that are willing to roll up their sleeves and like really learn this new world that we live in, there's an opportunity to really, take your, whatever your category you're in, to really win. So, yeah. But I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on as we wrap up.
Yeah, I guess I'll end with the thought, and not that working with your market should feel like, warfare, but like it is like we are moving from a, like I always talk about like the old world is infantry and artillery, and like now it's time for SEAL Team 6, like you need sniper rifles and night vision, and like it's a different world, but damn, like you can be so much more effective. Like there is a happy side on this transition if you can make it, where you're doing more with less. You're having better engagement with your customers. You're getting deeper with them and helping them understand quicker. So like I'm really excited. I'm obviously very bullish, but I think it's a cool time to be taking go-to-market teams through this transition, and a lot of opportunity for people and leading their teams forward and their own careers. So I see a lot of good stuff coming.
Man, listening to you reminds me of my co-founder at RP, Matt Bullion, who went to West Point. I haven't had this much military conversation in a long time. But Harris, over to you for a final thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's a zero-sum game. right? I mean, not to like sound like Ricky Bobby, but if you're not winning, you're losing. I mean, the reality is like people in the market are figuring this stuff out. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably one of them. We're also figuring it out. But if you're not like thinking about it and trying to learn about it, you're definitely not going to, it's just changing too fast. The good thing is that there's outsized, I totally agree with the point, Brendan. There are outsized rewards for the people that spend time to figure it out. And in that way, like the winners will win more. And I think you will see a separation for companies that are able to spend time on this and think with the end in mind. It's like, what does it mean to go to market? We're trying to sell. We want revenue booked in our system. We want closed won deals. Like that is the metric that matters. Not like getting replies, not even getting opens, not even sending emails. Like we want to drive business and grow our companies, and people that can work through this and get a little bit every day, I think are going to benefit. So I'm excited to talk about this with you both and get maybe other people on and just kind of talk about it on LinkedIn, because the only way I've found to learn about this is with other people, because everyone's out there testing, and I haven't been able to figure this out on my own. So I'm excited to talk about it with both of you.
I like the way that you frame that, and kind of as we wrap up, this really should be viewed as an invitation, and kind of you were just describing it. I mean, there's really a choice here, guys, and the choice is for everybody's listing, and where you're going. It's like, hey, either win faster or lose harder, and like that's really what you have. And even if you look at like I mean, there is a CRO, use provocative language, the CRO death sentence. I mean, if you are a CRO here, you have 18 months to get it right. Like that is the tenure of a CRO right now. And so these type of conversations are so, so important to equip you or aspiring CRO to be successful when you're in that seat. So I'm excited to continue the conversation. As you mentioned, Harris, may invite others in here for the three of us to continue having some conversations on effective ways to go to market. So guys, that wraps up episode 1. Appreciate the time, and we'll be back at it next week.
There we go. See y'all.
See ya.
Thanks.